Warren and Greg from the Thick as Thieves devs. David was going to be joining us, but he is unfortunately ill this morning. But you guys just got off a plane practically from the Game Awards. How was it? How was the whole reveal? How are you guys feeling right now?
I'll let Warren.
That's an awfully big show and the 10th anniversary show. And congrats to Jeff Keighley on that for surviving 10 years.
Absolutely.
And getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Lots of amazing games shown. I was particularly taken by a bunch of the smaller games because that's kind of my thing. But we were really excited about the response to Thick as Thieves. It was pretty heartwarming.
Fantastic. Yeah. Greg, how you feeling? How's the post-show vibe for you?
Same. I mean, it was pretty gratifying to see, the degree of excitement and so forth. And we've been working toward that reveal for a while. So it was nice to have it done. And then anytime I go through an experience like that, my immediate thing is like, oh, I got to go back and work on the game. It's like, this is all great, but now we got to get back to the game.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic.
Hopefully fulfill people's expectations. People want it to be good, and we have ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Let's go ahead and have you guys introduce yourselves and kind of what you do for Thick as Thieves, and then we'll get into the game and talk about it a little bit more, and maybe even show the trailer that you guys revealed at the Game Awards. So I guess Warren, tell people about yourself for those that don't know, for the, I guess, Zoomers around here. Maybe. Everyone should know Warren though, right?
Well,
he's made a game or two over the years.
Yeah, he's been around. Yeah.
And some panelists on the show may be happy about,
25, 26 in various capacities, I think. So I'm the chief creative officer for Other Side Entertainment now. I've been making games for a horrifying 41 years, which freaks me out.
Don't rip that. That's a long time.
Yeah, I don't know how I've survived. I mean, I always tell people if you don't love it, it'll kill you. But so I guess I must love it. But I co-founded the studio with Paul Neurath, who created Looking Glass, which some people may remember. We've worked together on a bunch of stuff, and we had specific reasons for starting the studio and specific kinds of games we wanted to make. But we can get into that if you want later, and I'll turn it over to Greg at this point.
Great.
I've had kind of a weird arc where I did work with Warren and Paul a very long time ago on a bunch of games that Looking Glass did. My first game I ever worked on was System Shock. I actually did the music for System Shock.
Nice.
Back in the day.
Fantastic.
And then ended up in project directorship. Directed the first Thief. And then I spent almost 20 years at Harmonix making music games. So most people know me from that. Like I've, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, stuff like that. And then in recent years, I've stayed in touch with Paul and Warren, and they had this opportunity and said, "Hey, you want to work on another stealth game?" I was like, "Sure." So I'm back.
Fantastic. And here we are with Thick as Thieves. I'm going to transition over here. We'll have this trailer rolling as we discuss this. Where did all this start out from? Like, what was the creation process, the first spark, as it were? How did you stumble upon it?
It started out with Paul and me trying to figure out how to take immersive simulations to the next level, the next step. We kind of helped pioneer that genre with games like Underworld and System Shock and Thief and Deus Ex and even Epic Mickey, though a lot of people don't see that as an immersive sim. It is. Not that I'm bitter about that. But we thought about it for years. I've been thinking the next logical step was multiplayer. You don't play a D&D game alone. You play with friends and tell stories together. And since that's part of, my view of immersive sims, multiplayer was obvious. The other thing about tabletop role-playing games is you don't just play them, finish, and move on to another game. There's a campaign element to them. So the idea of building a campaign as opposed to a standalone game was kind of obvious. There were some interesting pacing things. Immersive sims tend to be a little slow paced by design, and they're wonderful for that. but a modern audience might want a little more flow, a little more, pick up and go.
Right.
So we thought, let's make a game that's a little more action oriented. And then we thought where to start. Do we want to do a role playing game like Underworld? Well, there are plenty of role playing games out there. Do we want to do a shooter style game like System Shock? There are plenty of those out there. So let's go back to Thief, and we coined the term stealth action. We wanted to make a game that wasn't all waiting around for things to happen, but it combined stealth and action in some interesting way. And then we had to put the team together. So the idea started with me and Paul with those ideas, those high level concepts, but we needed a team to, turn that into what do you call it? I think you call it a game. And so we wanted experience and fresh ideas.
Yeah.
So Greg, as he said, he was the game director on the original Thief, has deep knowledge of stealth games and Thief. And we brought in David, who I wish could be here today, because boy, does he deserve a lot of credit for what the game has become. He comes to us from Firaxis, where he was working on 4X games, which are surprisingly similar in ways that he should talk to you about someday. But he came with fresh ideas. So we had that combination of experience and newness that we wanted. And then Paul and I, to be frank, kind of got out of the way and let an amazing team do their thing, and review work and talk to them about it. But all credit to Greg, David, and the team for making the game what it is.
Fantastic. One thing I have, and then I'll toss it off to Co and Zeke for some more questions. When it comes to like the unveil process, where do you let someone else handle that? Do you like to be in the mix for all of that? Or like, where do you guys even begin to think like, all right, how are we going to unveil this to the world? Like, what do we do? What's that process like for you guys?
Well, a lot of the logistics have been handled by Megabit, our publisher and owner, right? It's like we're part of like the Aeonic Megabit empire, and huge credit to them for actually thinking through. One of the things that was this is the first release I've been part of for a while, and I was taken aback by how complicated it was. Sort of like an international thing in terms of like, just localizing the trailer to different languages, and like there's, putting up all the different storefronts and so forth. So all the nuts and bolts of that, like full credit to Megabit, and they did a stellar job. For us, like the part that we were, involved with is like, okay, how do we want the game to be perceived? We were really heavily involved in the creation of the trailer. But that was our role. Other than that, we like showed up and, they told us where to go, and and we did our thing.
Sure. Yeah. Co, Zeke, do you guys have questions for the folks?
I do. I have. Well, do you have like 6 hours?
We got 30 minutes. 30 minutes in.
We'll keep it somewhat on point here. So here is my big question. So as many people has known, and I've talked about many times in the show, one of my favorite games of all time is Deus Ex. And one of the reasons it's one of my favorite games is because it showed me what the immersive sim genre is. And to me, one of the things that immersive sims do so well is they immerse you in the simulation of that character. You become that character, and you're analyzing that character's world, and you're playing it as that character would. Now, in my mind, when I first heard about the project, I was like, oh man, War Inspector immersive sim, let's go. And then when I heard that Thick as Thieves is like this multiplayer game, that immediately caused a kind of schism in my mind, because one of the things about immersive sims is that it's kind of you being immersed in the story. But in Thick as Thieves, since it's kind of so multiplayer, other people are going to be like dictating a lot of your story. So the big question I had is, what elements of the immersive sim are going to be brought into Thick as Thieves that are going to make it stand out from this very saturated kind of multiplayer pack that you're entering into? And how is that going to like construct the foundation of it?
Well, I think you kind of answered your question already. There are lots of multiplayer games out there. There aren't a lot of multiplayer immersive sims. And that alone, I mean, dropping multiple players into a deeply simulated world, deeply you can define, simulated you can define, but the dropping players into a deep simulation and seeing how each of them interacts with that world, how each of them engages with the world, I think is a strong differentiator. One of the other things about Other Side, we had a variety of reasons for starting the studio. One of which was we have a strong belief in the power of innovation and doing things that no one's ever seen in a game or done in a game before. And so doing things that we don't know how to do is part of the appeal. You didn't ask, but I volunteered that I've been making games for 41 years. It's because I don't do sequels well and I don't repeat myself well. And so doing things that I don't know how to do is part of what keeps me going. And a multiplayer stealth immersive sim is a huge challenge. And we challenge the team to come up with that. I'll let Greg jump in here in a second, but one of the most interesting things about the game was I thought we were going to make a heist game, a co-op heist game, because that was, I frankly, to diss on myself for a minute, that's the obvious thing to do. And David, in particular, working with Greg, came to me and Paul and said we should make a PvP game. And after I picked my jaw up off the ground and my head stopped exploding, I thought, wow, stealth games are about not interacting with stuff. And, PvP games are about interacting with stuff. How do you do that? And Greg and David and the team, they're going to be working on it till the game ships. But I think they've got it down and they've solved that seemingly unsolvable problem. So that's going to differentiate us. We support that immersive sim idea of multiple play styles where you get to solve problems the way you want. And well, I'll let Greg go further, but players screwing around with your plan is a really powerful idea that you don't get in a lot of other games.
Well, so to maybe drill down into some specifics a little bit, just to kind of nerd out on, like where we're actually at development. There's a couple of axes worth exploring. One is kind of the obvious one of AI and AI response, right? Which in games like Thief and Deus Ex is like a big foil for the players, right? It's you and a bunch of AIs who are hopefully well enough executed to give you kind of a fun, challenging,
an immersive experience. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, sorry, my audio's glitching out a little bit here. Okay. And so one of the things that kind of emerged pretty quickly, and we're still, it's difficult, we're still tuning, but this idea of like you have an AI, you have a guard, right, who's responding to you, and then there's other human players in the mix, and that immediately becomes this rich territory for fun, right? It's like you see the guard, the other player doesn't see the guard, you sick the other player, you sick the guard on the other player, or you show up right after some other player spooked all the guards and they ran to the other end of the manor, or it's like there's a lot of really, it's like it fits very much into the kind of emergence, right? The idea that you got multiple players stimming these guards or NPCs in unpredictable ways, which leads to these scenarios which are not planned, but often like really rich and detailed and awesome. Like things happening, like wow, like that you would never have scripted out. So that aspect of it is really challenging, but really rewarding, and is really working. The other one that we're still in the middle of exploring is this idea of, okay, you have a persona and you're inhabiting a persona, you have a unique skill set and so forth, and how do those personas between, like if you have different human players with these well developed personas, how do those smack into each other? Like who gets the upper hand? If you have somebody who's got a disguise and somebody who's a second story specialist, well, it's asymmetrical. How do those things, relate to each other in ways that are entertaining, where nobody's dominant, everybody feels like they got a clear shot at it. And if they lose for for reasons that they understand and agree with. So those are the two things I would say, the two kind of really interesting aspects of immersive sim as applied to this multiplayer experience.
Yeah, one other thing, in the spirit of not letting you guys get a word in edgewise,
It's our favorite
part of the immersive sim thing for me is the concept that playstyle matters. I mean, I wrote up a 12-page manifesto that no one would read, and finally I narrowed it down to like those two words: playstyle matters. And the way you decide to play in an immersive sim like Deus Ex or Epic Mickey determines the unique experience that you have. Again, not that I'm bitter.
Yeah, no, there's no chip. I don't see a chip on your shoulder or anything about that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
If you listen closely, you can hear Warren dying on the hill in the background.
But part of the deal is every player creates a unique experience. And part of that is creating a game that supports multiple play styles. In Deus Ex, you can fight, sneak, or talk. I mean, I could talk about that for days, but that was kind of the high level idea. And in Epic Mickey, it was draw and erase. And in Thick as Thieves, Greg and David and the team have really done a wonderful job of supporting multiple play styles. And this gets to your question pretty directly. If you want to be a hunter, going directly after other players and knocking them out, or I'm not going to give you tactics, but knocking them out and stealing their loot, and that's the way you get stuff. You can do that. But if you want to be a ghost and I'm going to overstate to make my point, never be seen, that playstyle is supported too. So you can see how those two playstyles, even in a multiplayer context, would result in completely different experiences. And that's also something that other games don't provide. The other thing, and then I will let you ask another question, one of the other things about immersive sims that's kind of hardwired, it's a little less systemic, is the idea of alternate paths through the map. And so you can see where if you're up on the rooftops, you'll have a different experience than you do if you're down on the street. And you'll have a different experience on the street than you would in the sewers. So you combine different play styles with different routes, and you got an immersive sim at some level. And multiplayer just adds to the chaos that you have to plan for. I think it totally works. And none of this came from me. It all came from the team. So, yeah, you want a team that's coming back with better ideas than you have. Or when you suggest an idea, they say, oh, we thought of that 3 weeks ago. And that's what this team does all the time.
Awesome. I love it.
I was with you guys when we had that call earlier last week. And one of the questions I had about the game specifically was, how long do the matches go and how do they end?
So that's, the short, unsatisfying answer is that we're still messing with it and tuning it. But I can tell you what the ambition is right now. It's between 15 minutes and a half hour. And we don't expect it to go much over a half hour. And right now, the way it's triggered is like there's a main quest. In each match, there's a main quest and some ancillary quests and a narrative quest. You have a bunch of different motivations that you can choose between as a player. And right now, if somebody collects the main loot, then it's a countdown to the exit. And so if that happens, and usually the path to the main loot is complex enough so that can't happen quickly. It's usually at least, 10 or 15 minutes before they figure out the right clues and actually navigate their way through this pretty awesome system that hopefully we'll get to talk about a little bit about how we keep it variable and keep it fresh every time. But once they work their way through that labyrinth, the first person who filches the main thing, it's like, oh, okay, everybody, wrap up your business, let's go. And then there's a set of opportunities for people to bushwhack each other on the way to the exit if they know what the exit is.
So everybody knows when the main loot has been taken.
Yes, you get a toast. Say, okay, everybody, in the countdown.
Okay.
The 5-minute countdown kicks in. But all that stuff, as I say, it's all subject to change as we continue to test.
Right.
But that's actually working pretty well at this point.
One thing that David and Greg talk about a lot, and it's a nice phrase that sums things up pretty well, is "win your way." Greg talked about the 3 kinds of quests in every mission, every session, and what that means is players can kind of define success for themselves. And I don't want to steal their thunder, but they talk all the time to me and Paul about I don't want to say everybody wins, but you don't have to get the main loot to feel successful, and you don't have to get the most valuable ancillary loot to feel successful. You don't have to follow your own character's personal history quest to feel successful. It's another way in which we vary up the experience. I mean, there's so many axes along which players are going to have unique experiences and tell their own stories. It's sort of like, the experience of playing a tabletop role-playing game where some of the most fun is screwing over the game master. In this case, you can kind of screw over not just the other players, but the game itself. And it's a feature,
Well, we have a theory about our players, and I hope this theory is true, is that there's a lot of players out there in the world interested in a game like this, where like a lot of the entertainment they get out of is being immersed in the world. Like, this is a fun place to be. And what we suspect is there's a lot of players that are not so interested in a zero-sum experience. They want to win, they want accolades if they win, and so forth. But that there's some space and flexibility for them to kind of do their own thing, and engage in direct PvP competition if that's what they want. But also, we'll probably get into this, but like if they just want to pursue the narrative arc of their player, that's available to them as well.
Right.
And over the next year plus, we will figure out how to strike this balance.
Right. Yep.
So I got a couple related and unrelated questions. Real quick, I would be remiss if I did not ask this from the godfather of the creators of themselves. I get asked all the time for a short definition on why 90% of the games that have similar mechanics aren't, and why 10% of them are immersive sims. So I'd love to ask you, Warren, how do you define, in just a couple sentences, what is an immersive sim?
Couple of sentences. I have like a
Yeah,
2
I know. That's what I usually end up doing. When people ask me what an immersive sim is, I usually end up doing like a few paragraphs. So I'm wondering, like, do you have a distilled version? Because I've had a lot of trouble with that. So maybe you've been better.
You didn't attend this lecture at Cambridge that he gave?
I'm getting a message from PR in all caps. It says, "Why did you ask that, Co?" Please.
Okay, I'm making this up as I go. I reserve the right to change my mind as I think about it, and damn you, I will. But in my mind, an immersive sim, it starts with removing as many barriers to belief that you are in the world as possible. Removing barriers, which means never thwarting player expectation. And the way you don't thwart player expectation is by building what we call a simulation in video gaming. We don't literally simulate a world, but we create systems that you can reason with, that you can use to your advantage in ways that are logical, but not necessarily totally predictable. And what that means is you can make a plan, you can use your tools and what exists in the world and your wits to solve problems in logical but not predictable ways. And if you succeed, you feel smart. And if you fail, you understand why and learn from it. But what the end result, and maybe this is the culmination of my made up answer, immersive sims, a true immersive sim allows and encourages emergent behaviors, emergent outcomes. And what that means is players players can be surprised by what happens. And when it's really magical, they can surprise us. And in most games, the biggest surprise you get, I'm not dissing other games, there are lots of joys of gaming. But in most games, the joy is I used a little gun to kill that thing, not a big one. Or they tried to flank me and I figured it out. Or I got the quest item and gave it to the guy who gave me the quest and he gave me 10 points. And so there aren't, I mean, honestly, there are a lot more games doing the immersive sim thing now, either are immersive sims or are ImSim adjacent than there used to be. And I can't even tell you how gratifying that is. You know, it's a lot of people think I should feel like, well, they're encroaching on my territory. But really, it's like part of the deal for me, and my arrogance has always been, I want to change things. And I think, and I'm not saying there's any direct influence, and you know the games, you can figure out what games have been exemplifying some of the immersive sim characteristics. I'm not saying there's direct influence, but the time seems to have come when a bunch of games are doing it. And it's all good because it's getting at what games can do that no other medium can do. And there's kind of a moral obligation to me to do that. So that was more than like 3 sentences. Sorry.
It was still a great definition. No, it's a great answer. That's awesome. Thank you.
Go off, homie,
That
go
is,
off. It's all good.
I can check that off my bucket list. Asked Warren Spector what an immersive sim is. Great. Okay, so we're good. So 2 actually game-related questions now. So this is again an interesting schism that you guys are bringing together from like traditional ImSim gameplay and this new multiplayer thing. So in this case, one of the things that I was wondering is, how are you guys treating players who suck at your game? What do I mean by that? I mean like, if I'm repeatedly losing, am I progressing? Am I still having a fun time? Like, this brings in this interesting characteristic where it's like there's this level of I have to be decent enough because I'm fighting other players to have my immersive sim experience. So how does that factor in to like to players who are never going to get the loot or not going to be able to be as quick as the other people? Older gamers, hi, they may not be able to keep up with the younger. Like, are there systems and mechanics in place for continued progression even through skill-based losing?
There are. I mean, so right now, in terms of where it's at in development, there's kind of roughly 3 directions that you can go as a player as you drop down into a match. You can just go after the main quest and battle other thieves. You can turn your attention to a pretty rich assortment of like ancillary loot, some of which is quite valuable. Like you can avoid the main thing if you so choose and still have a fun, rewarding outcome. And we also have this design innovation that we're actually quite excited about, where each thief has their own linear arc, their own linear narrative arc. So you have your own agenda that is not shared with the other players, that persists across multiple sessions. Might last you 20 sessions to actually work your way through the narrative arc of your individual thief. And so we expect in any given match, like maybe everybody's going head to head on the main quest, but it could well be that people, either because they just are interested in the story or because they feel outclassed by other players, that they're going off to kind of collect their own loot, all of which allows you to upgrade your character, irrespective of whether or not you're getting the main loot. If you get the main loot every time, you're going to move quicker for sure, but you're never gated on that. It's not, the idea is that you wouldn't be frustrated because you can't ever win. So the other thing I'll say add one thing for personal experience. I am that player. I'm the punching bag on our team. And I this is a role that I'm comfortable with. But
we
one
call
of the things
it
that happens to me
around here, Greg.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not know that.
Me and you,
It's
baby.
good to know. Okay. Is occasionally you got people. It's pretty chaotic. There's a lot of variables. There's other players duking out with each other, and then there's all these NPCs in the mix. And occasionally, I just stroll right in, grab the loot, saunter to the exit, It's awesome. just because, because sometimes it just plays out, you like luck matters in this game. And I think that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple
Speaking to
other
that, just
points.
I just wanted to know, like, if when the last loot is taken, does that give a person like you the opportunity to like when everybody's attention's on the last loot going to the exit, does that give that
Yep.
that punching bag person a chance to like go around and grab up all the stuff while everybody's distracted?
Yes, or you can, even from the beginning of the match, you can decide, you know what, I'm gonna sit out the main quest. I'm gonna go explore the other mansions, or the other, like the maps are big enough, like there's multiple points of interest, multiple goals and so forth. So you can just decide at the outset. But yeah, that's absolutely. It's like, oh, I got 5 minutes. Okay, what am I going to do with my 5 minutes? I don't have the main loot. Let's go see what else I can accomplish in this time.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple other points about that. I have a lot of rules, and I like have these posters that I post around the office when we had an office, and one of them is there's always another way. As soon as anybody on my team says the player has to or the player must, all I hear is blah, 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 because there's always another way. And because that's one of the real powers of immersive sims. If you're not good at shooting in Deus Ex, for example, try sneaking. If you're not good at sneaking, try something else. And if your first plan doesn't work, try another plan. So I've always thought that immersive sims were, in a weird sort of way, totally mainstream because they support another way. So there's that. You'll find a way to succeed as you define it. Like if you're in the sewers, you're not gonna have to worry as much about falling off a rooftop, right? But the other thing is, at the end of the trailer, Greg usually points this out when we're talking through the trailer. There's a screen in the Thieves Den where there's a list of all the thiefy, not all, but a lot of the thiefy things you can do in a session. And so that means there are a lot of ways to get bragging rights. And I worked on the design of a massively multiplayer game, actually, longer ago than I want to say. And one of the things is I literally wanted players to get different laurel wreaths that they could wear and different medallions they could wear based on how they got through a particular quest. Never being seen, killing everything that moves, killing nothing, shortest run through, played alone, and like dozens and dozens of success criteria. And TAT does some of that. So even if you're not a great, hunter, you might be a great ghost. If you're not a great ghost, be a great sewer crawler. If you're not, there are a variety of ways to succeed, which I think will make the game more appealing to. You're not allowed to say you're old, by the way, with me on this call, but with old guys like you. Okay.
There we go. Love it.
Fair. I have a question in terms of like it's a social aspect. It's multiplayer. We got to see a bit of the footage, which you guys have not shown the public, so I won't go into it too much. But there was a sequence where one thief was on a rooftop and another thief was on a rooftop, and you can kind of see them over there in the distance, but there's no in-game VoIP, from what I understand. And the other question I think was asked by another journalist in that segment was that because of griefing, you guys don't have plans for that. As a content creator, I love proximity voice. And I think tons of people enjoy the idea of proximity voice, even though there's a very easy way to grief and, be a general asshole on the internet when you have such a thing in a game like this. Where does that, like the social aspect of it, come into play, and how you guys can or might make decisions down the line on if that would ever change? Is that something
I'm going
you
to
guys
add
are
in
thinking
something
of?
real quick.
Yeah,
I'm
go
going to add in
ahead.
something real quick. So I'm assuming the lack of text and VoIP is specifically so people won't work together. do you plan on addressing situations when you start getting characters and people in the game that are doing like, the tat wiggle, where they look left and right a little bit, and if the other person does it, then they're allies and start playing together.
Yeah.
That happens that happens in other games. So it's like, are you guys going to say, no, don't do that, that's not okay? Or are you going to say, you guys play how you want and see what happens? So what is your approach to that?
Exactly.
Well, philosophically, our approach is pretty clear, and it's like, let players play the way they want, right? That we build the sandbox. I mean, it's not really a sandbox, but you know what I'm saying, right? It's like this, rich environment, and just let people go nuts and do what they want in it. One thing that we're super aware of is we cannot call this game done until we have like a lot of hours of people. Like it's hard for us to predict how people are going to behave. So things might go in a direction that we didn't expect and we won't welcome. But the ideal scenario for us is like people find ways to entertain themselves and each other in this environment, and the less guardrails we put on it, the better. So
I like that. So I'll just ask JP's next question. Yeah. So are you married to the idea of voice being off? Is that like a permanent decision you've made?
I can see it's such a hard thing, right? Because again, people on the internet.
Well, a lot of people,
assholes,
they go solve that themselves with Discord.
With
right?
Discord,
that's true. That's exactly right. That's like one of the things we were kind of wondering how far you guys wanted to set up barriers for that kind of stuff. So
cool. One of the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I was just going to say, like if during testing that became apparent that we had to do that, then that would be a sad day, and I hope that day doesn't come. Like ideally, people figure it out, and and they love the game, and they figure out how to entertain themselves in this environment that we built for them. And if they do it in different ways than we expected, that's kind of central to ImSim philosophy in a way, right? That's kind of the point.
Yeah. I was going to say you guys are kind of like fighting against yourselves in some ways, because the goal is to give the player as many tools as possible. But the more tools the players have, the more ways they're going to figure out to get around like things that you may potentially not want them to. So you're kind of, it's a give take. It's a give take.
Yes, that's right.
In my immersive sim lecture, there's a slide that says players will break your game.
Sure.
And that's a feature for us. But you mentioned, you've all mentioned streaming. Go figure. And another thing I've always thought is that immersive sims are perfect for streamers.
Big time.
I mean, and I say that because, back in the Underworld, System Shock, Thief, Deus Ex days, we didn't have the possibility of streaming. There was no way to do it. And so when people came up with their wacky solutions to problems that no one else in the world had ever done, all I could do was talk about it. And now you'll
go to the forums.
But you'll be able to show it now, and not just here's one way to solve this problem, but look, here are 10 ways to solve this problem. Come up with 100 more. And the reason I'm so confident, not just that people used to talk about this stuff, but I can't tell you how many times I heard about other players or watched testers do things that I didn't know would work. and that we're so out there. I mean, like using the weakest gun in the game to solve 3 problems at once. Like I saw that happen. Getting through Deus Ex without ever being seen once. Like I didn't know that was possible. And frankly, you'd have to be insane to do it. But you'll be able to show that, as opposed to, I don't even want to say most games now, but a lot of games, oh, look, it's another stream of someone doing exactly what everybody else did with a bigger gun,
right,
or a bigger axe.
Yep.
So I think it's ideal for the modern age.
Sure. Yeah.
No,
awesome.
and we see that in testing already, right? So, it's early days, but because a lot of us record our sessions and so forth. And there's some pretty entertaining stuff that goes down. And some of it's like, oh God, that's an exploit. We're going to fix it. It's like, we can't ship that. But right. A lot of it is just like amazing stuff. Yeah. People just like using the tools in weird ways that you wouldn't expect to get a drop on each other.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I guess I'm the social...
I have an idea that you guys can use for free is official Discord server, and just have the voice chat open and just label it dirty cheaters or something like that.
Fantastic. Yeah.
There you go.
That'll work great. That'll work great. Yeah, I guess I'm the social question guy today. Is there any sense of like duo or team play that could ever happen in this, or will it be the thieves are out there by themselves and that's kind of how it's going to always be? And you want those maybe, alliances to pop up within the game itself, but you're not going to really set up like a duo queue, for example, for a multiplayer server or anything like that.
That
Over to
feels
you,
like
Greg.
rich, well, that's I think rich territory. And intriguing to think about. But to be candid, like part of our agenda is to constrain our scope so that we can deliver something awesome
Sure.
in the chosen scope. If this
Yeah.
works, which I expect it to, because it's so far so good.
Yeah.
Then I think that there's a lot of possibilities. The whole idea of multiplayer immersive sim is just it's just giving rise to all these new experiences and new design concepts, which could go in a lot of different directions. But for this version of this, it's like, no, this is what it's going to be.
Sure.
And then we'll see what people
Cool.
do with that.
Awesome. That'll be my last question. Zeke, Co, do you guys have fun? We've kept them 20 minutes over, so I do want to do final questions.
So I have a bunch.
One final
but we'll have to do another interview. Let's do one final one. Okay. I am primarily a player who comes from the traditional ImSim background as one of my favorite types of games to play, period. From that background, will I be able to, as a solo player, find a similar experience playing through all of the narratives of all the characters? Like, is there going to be the kind of thing where if I want to experience TAT as a solo player and also as a completionist player, is there going to be like ways and reasons for me to be like, okay, I'm going to pick this guy, do all of his narrative stuff and get all his story, then this guy, all of his narrative stuff? Is there going to be something breadcrumbing me through all the content, or is it going to be more of a you go out and seek it yourself and that kind of thing?
I'll say I hope
so.
Okay,
So
good
each
answer.
Of, each of the player characters will have a very explicit, linear narrative arc that you can, that you can commit to and work your way through. And what we expect is that, players will do one and then they'll move on to the next one. They'll do them all. And we haven't made any commitments, but we would very much, things like additional player arcs and as DLC is very much what we're thinking. Because
Cool. Okay.
Like the narrative backdrop of the world, and this is something where we very much took a design lesson from Thief, is it's a rich, deeply realized world but not through exposition. You just learn about these little details from a poster on the wall or an overheard conversation or a letter you read, but all that stuff is all crafted to fit together behind the scenes. So there's lots of opportunity for us to extend it in new and different directions, in the future, and we would love to do that.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So it is primary. It's a multiplayer game, right? It's not. We don't want to misrepresent it as like being like Thief or Deus Ex or whatever. It's not. It's a multiplayer game, but sort of with this solo narrative experience kind of integrated into it in a way that we've never really seen before. So,
this is a very unique project, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Part of the reason to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Zeke,
Very excited to see how it turns out.
final question, Zeke?
That was sort of my final question. Was what Co asked was like the end game. Like people love to max level quickly. And if they max out like everything, like first of all, is there a max out for characters? Like, and what is the carrot on the stick after that?
Yeah, like one of the things I was thinking when I first heard about this is like, if you complete everyone's narrative arc, is there like a set of missions that opens up that involves all of them that you don't get unless you do all the previous people? Like, is there building kind of stuff between the characters, or are they each an island kind of thing?
That's an interesting idea that we'll take back to the lab.
Fantastic. What we want to hear. Well, I think we've kept you guys long enough. We really do appreciate you joining us here. This was a sponsored segment, but I don't know why, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time. Like, this has been amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic having you guys on. You guys are welcome back to join the show whenever. Timeline-wise, what are you guys looking at here for Thick as Thieves? When's the next we're going to hear?
When can we play it?
And also, yeah, when can we play it?
Well, that's an interesting question. We might be able to get you in a little early, but it's going to be sometime in 2026.
Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. Best thing to do now, and this is the hashtag ad here. Go over to Thick as Thieves. Make sure you guys add it to your wish list. You should be able to find the link in the chat, in all of our chats right now, which will just take you over to the Steam page. Congratulations to both of you and the entire team once again on the reveal. It was a pleasure to have you all on the show. Any final words you guys want to put out there?
I just want to say how. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I can wait.
I was just gonna say thank you guys so much for coming on and being like so clear about this. I just wanted to say how much like it's so amazing seeing what it is and then hearing about what you guys have done. That's all. I'm sorry, but you go ahead. I totally misheard.
Oh
you.
no, I was just gonna say
Yeah, I'm
thank
so
you for
sorry.
having us on. This was it was really fun. It was it was fun to talk about it. And
Yeah, we've been waiting a
Yes.
long time to talk about this. It's great to get the chance, and you actually asked some questions that we haven't been asked 100 times, which is
Yes.
which is always fun. I like it when people try to stump me and get to see how I do. So I'm going to be thinking about a 3-sentence definition of immersive sims for a while now. Thanks a lot.
Please send it to me when you get it. I need it as soon as possible. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more and more as Tat comes.
I told you, no one will read my 12-page manifesto.
Give him a
man.
PowerPoint, Warren. He'll read the whole thing. He'll give you some cliff notes on it. And it'll be, trust me, Co's the guy that will read that. So
All right, sounds good.
you've got it prepped. Thank you both, and have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And good luck with the game. Like I said, you're welcome back anytime. And that's it for Thick as Thieves. Fantastic.